Welcome to Pods with Posh and Paul, a podcast designed to inspire and challenge listeners through story, experience and insight. To face adversity, learn from suffering and discover how to embrace life with a heart filled with love and gratitude. We are so thrilled to have you journey with us and can't wait to share your stories. Join Sue O'Callaghan and Joanne Webb as we disrupt the theory that everyone has perfect lives.
Hi, and thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. We have got an awesome episode for you. Our guest is an international speaker, facilitator, author and creator of the $1 Million Handshake. She has owned and operated several highly successful training companies and has been recognised both nationally and internationally as a leader in sales and service training. Not only is she a successful businesswoman, but she's also an amazing philanthropist who often travels to Uganda to help build homes for orphans and vulnerable children. The bio on her website describes her as married, with one husband, 3 children and 2 dogs, who travels from Brisbane, Australia, and loves working with all the different cultures worldwide. Here to tell her story of grit, determination and girl power is the one and only Catherine Molloy. Hi Catherine, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's lovely to see you, lovely to hear your voice. Let's talk about you. You have published an amazing book called The $1 Million Handshake, which has been printed in lots of different languages, is that right?
Maybe not lots, but a couple, yes.
Oh, come on.
Chinese.
More than just English. You're doing well. And you travel around the world. Looks like you've got a very glamorous life, going all around the world, speaking to people about communication skills, about the importance of presence and all of that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so because I often see your Facebook page and you're forever flying here, there and everything. It looks very, very glamorous. However, we know as working women and parents and all that, life isn't always what it seems on the outside. So tell us how you became to be the jetsetter breadwinner that you are.
Oh, okay. So around 10 years ago, it's actually a little bit longer than that now, but in the GFC crisis and, the recession that Australia didn't have, my husband had his own crisis around 2009. And I woke up one morning. He was at the bottom of the bed, and I'd never seen my husband really ever cry. And I just knew in that moment, that was the moment that I knew everything in our life would change. And I looked at my husband and I said, what's happening? And he said, I don't think I can ever go back into work. I can't go back to work. I can't step foot in the work. So we had a real estate office and we'd sort of been partners for around 20 years, but his father got ill and wanted him to go into work there. And it really wasn't for him. Real estate, for some behaviour styles, for some people, the way they communicate is really upsetting because, he's a truthful person that worked really hard, and he just felt a lot of the times clients would go to someone else and then they come back to him and say, I should have signed with you, you told me the right things, and he just felt these things are happening quite often to him, and it was hard work. There was obviously a lot more, but 11 years on and he still has never stepped foot back in the workplace.
Well, at least he was telling his absolute truth on that day.
So he tried, and I knew at that moment. But, leading up to that, to support the sales teams, and we had 3 children under 4, and I was looking after the children as well. But come that time when I saw my husband and I realised things were going to change, they did very, very quickly. I went into the office to work out what's happening there, what's going on. And I actually really loved real estate. Mm-hmm. It was so much fun. There was something new happening every day. And after a couple of weeks, I found out that they were actually just replying to clients that would inquire by email. And I said, why aren't we phoning them? So I picked up the phone and I started to call the people that were making inquiries. And then I phoned all the owners and I got the real estate team. We had 18 team members, 4 were property management, and I got the team to take me around to all the properties that we had listed. And then I called the owners, and I remember a couple of them saying, "You make it sound so good, we should keep it," because as I walked around, I could see who it was going to suit, what were the benefits of this property, and I became really excited. And so I did my real estate license during this time, but I had to take an agent with me and to the properties, and I ended up selling 3 houses in one day and 5 in 1 week.
Oh my God.
And it was a record for the business.
Woohoo! We love stories like that.
Yeah. So I just really loved, what I discovered was, 20 years ago, around the age of 19, I had started to study body language, and I was topping sales for the bank. And they brought me into their training center, and I started teaching people in product knowledge and customer service. And I was on the merger team because our bank, the CBA, Commercial Bank of Australia, merged with the Bank of New South Wales to become Westpac. Mm-hmm. So it was during those times I learned all these communication skills and customer service. And, I loved working with customers and speaking to them and letting them know about the great products that were coming in. So, fast forward another 20 years, I took those skills into the future with me. So I didn't have technology skills. I didn't understand all the different systems, but I understood people and how to communicate to them, mm-hmm. because the raw behavior styles of people haven't changed. Anyway, I said to my husband, "Look, I'd love to keep it. We're going great. I've worked out all the finances. Everything's looking amazing." But he said, "I'm never going to get better while we have this business."
Okay.
So we had to sell the business in the recession we didn't have, which we did have. And we had properties tied up to it as well. So we lost well over $1 million, mm-hmm. which meant neither of us had jobs. We still had we still had 3 children in the school next door, which happened to be a private school. And I didn't want to uproot everyone's life. My plan as a mother, I think the first thing is to protect, isn't it?
Totally.
Protect your husband, protect your children, protect your house. You sort of really want to look after everything. And I thought, well, what do I do really well? And I thought back to the days, it's customer service, and I love working with people, and everyone needs customer service skills, right?
Totally.
That's what I thought. But apparently people weren't wanting the customer service skills. I started the training company. They were after leadership and management. So I did my diploma of leadership management, and I wrote a couple of units for the diploma of leadership management. And very quickly I started my training company. And with some government assistance, they had government funding for diplomas of leadership management, business, and quite a few other skills. So I started the training company all by myself. And in my first year of business, I signed over $1 million in contracts for training.
Whoa, you're doing the whole story. I'm just kind of blown away by it all, because I knew a snippet of your life, but this is so crazy. So your husband one day wakes up, obviously has a bit of a breakdown, can't go back to work. And there's just no time to fall apart in situations like that, is there? Because somebody has to be the strength when one of you is weak. And you just had that abundance of strength and just went with it. And then you go and achieve something so amazing. That's so incredible.
I'm quite intrigued though, because in a relationship, it's quite hard, isn't it? You need to work together as a team. And yet what you've said is really interesting. Your husband almost is in post-traumatic stress. If the business is still there, he can't carry on, he can't survive. And yet you obviously are thriving in it. Your skills are there as well. So how did you manage that situation where you want one thing, he wants something else? Was it total compromise? Because it's quite a hard situation, isn't it, when you want different things in a marriage? Or were you just totally focused on, well, I'll do something different with it and we'll just move ahead? Because you sound very business organised and very strategic. But how was that for you?
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned the word strategic. It is my top strength. So as soon as my husband said he's not going to get well while we have the business, that obviously is priority. If you don't have health, you have nothing. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even be able to run that business if my husband wasn't going to get well.
Yeah.
So if someone says to you they're not going to get well, you pretty well need to take it seriously. Yeah. And so that just meant we had to do everything we could do so that he would get better. And in the meantime, I still had the desire to look after my children, keep the house, and make money.
Yeah, but that also takes courage, doesn't it? That takes courage and that takes vision. So people listening to this that have had some kind of disaster happen in their life that says, well, Catherine obviously has got both those, courage and vision, and I don't, and I'm sitting on the sofa every day just feeling helpless. What can they do to actually have that vision or find the courage to move ahead?
Look, I'm glad that you said that. And, you know, it is much easier for some people than other people. Absolutely, 100%. My behaviour style, you know, that I've been born into is to have my cup half full. Mm-hmm. So I will always look for what is working, what could work, what we could do. And as you said, I do tend to look into, I have vision, I have focus, and I can see the future. However, you know, I haven't used these skills for a long time. The thing is, they don't leave us, and we have to dig deep. You know, there's two reasons people do things, and one is through inspiration and one is through desperation. Yeah. And so perhaps that person on the couch really isn't that desperate yet.
That's a fair point.
And maybe they're not inspiring themselves. You know, it's the people that hit rock bottom that you see decide to make that change if they want to. Yeah. Now, I don't want anyone to hit rock bottom. So that means that we do need to develop the mindset and understand that, you know, what we think, what we dream, we can make reality. And of course, I'm not going to say I'm going to be a 50-meter Olympic freestyler, right? That would just be ridiculous. That's not going to happen. So it's setting, you know, I work with a lot of people on setting smart goals around their values. A lot of people don't even understand their values. And one of my top values was always courage. And it appeared for the last 5 years as my top value. But interesting, this year, my top value is kindness.
That's interesting. And this is what we want our listeners to hear. We want them to hear that, yes, life does fall apart. Yes, life can be difficult, but you can be strategic about it. These are the ways that you can move forward. And actually, there's a saying, isn't there, when push comes to shove, and it's exactly what you're saying, that when life gets really desperate, or when you find inspiration, then you can move on.
So, and it was also good, I really liked what you said as well about, like, you know, you hadn't used a lot of these skills for many, many years, but they hadn't gone. And I think that's what, you know, there's people out there listening to this wanting inspiration. And, you know, maybe it might be you're a mother and you've given up your career many years ago, but you haven't lost all of that. You're just a slightly different version of yourself now, or, you know, or a guy or whatever. It doesn't matter who we are, but we do forget that we were really good at something once upon a time. So it's always good to look back, isn't it? And that's what I get a lot of my clients do. I get them to look back on their achievements, what they've achieved in life, or what they really enjoyed doing many, many years ago. And it starts to just recap things, and it gives you that inspiration, and actually I could do that, I did do that, I achieved that, I can do it again. And it just, I think, as for people who are desperate, that might be a
and it's what Catherine said, isn't it? It's about reinventing yourself. So let's hear the story about you reinventing yourself after real estate.
Actually, I just got goosebumps everywhere, and I don't think it's to do with the air conditioning, but it was to do with when you were saying about looking back, because I was standing in my training company in the training room with adult learners. See, I never thought of myself as a teacher going through school, but I love working with peers, and I love seeing businesses grow and seeing people, once they understand, because you can have the best furniture, the best technology, but if you don't communicate well to yourself, to your customers, to your teams, everything does fall apart. That's why so many businesses do close down. But I remember standing there, and it was my first year in, and I had my flip chart, and I was writing on the flip chart, and I turned around, and in that moment I turned around and saw the adult learners behind me. It took me back. I had the flash from when I was 7 years of age. I was put on this planet to do what I'm doing now. When I was 7 years of age, the kids used to come over from school, because I started school at the age of 4, right? Child protege and all that. And the children used to come over on a Monday and Tuesday, and they'd all come into my room. And on a Sunday night, I used to list the top 10 countdown, the top 10 songs from Countdown. Everyone would learn them. Then we'd jump on our bikes and ride up and down the street singing the songs. And So, but I had this little green sticky board, and I had a little chalkboard that we'd write on, and it was amazing to see myself all these years later standing in the room with all my peers once again.
Wow.
While I'm writing down things for people to learn, and that's when I knew that I was really living my life on purpose.
Yeah. And not just as a teacher, but your book is all about communication and connection, isn't it? And that's what you're passionate about.
That's what I'm so passionate about. And, you know, it was interesting, even as a young girl, I used to run these little puppet shows every quarter. I'd raise $50 and we'd give it to the Children's Hospital here. So when I decided to start this business, and they call me the puppeteer of body language, right? And so once again, here's this link from these puppet shows where I used to raise money to now. And when I started the business, I said to my husband, you know, I want 10% to go to charity. Like, I hadn't even earned a cent. And he goes, well, why would you do that when we've just lost all this money? And I said, because I need a purpose just a bit bigger than us.
Yep.
And, you know, within a year, by 18 months, I ended up with 18 staff of my own. I had 36 trainers around Australia with contracts and access to. And by 4 years, we went international, and I started speaking and training in China and India.
Congratulations. I mean, that's huge, isn't it? And what was the secret to success to grow exponentially as you did?
I believe, number one, self-development. So I think everybody should continue on a learning journey.
Totally.
So every year, pick a course, do something, add it to your bucket list, add it to those tools and skills that you can pull out and use whenever you need to. There was too long when I didn't do this as a mother, and I would recommend any mum at home with children, do a couple of online, anything that you can do that keeps that brain and yourself active, that just keeps filling your pockets up with information, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then you never know when it's called upon. And I think that would be my biggest tip to anyone that's been in the workforce, had to have changes of jobs or things have happened in their life. You know, keep learning, never stop learning.
Well, the day we stop learning is the day we die, really, isn't it? And if people are that ignorant, they don't want to learn, then you can see how stuck they are as people. So I just think always to be an open book, keep learning every day. It's so rewarding.
Now is the ideal time, isn't it, with the internet? I mean, young mums can actually get onto the internet. It's not as though there's no access to information anymore.
And there's so many free courses. I mean, if you know, as soon as you type something into the blooming internet nowadays, and your inbox gets bombarded and Facebook gets bombarded, but there's so many free tools out there as well, isn't there? You don't have to pay a fortune for these things anymore.
It's incredible. Like, even in November this year, I'll be coming back to New Zealand, and we'll run a one-day free event on body language for influence and authority. Like, come along.
Well, we came to your free event last time, didn't we? Because we were helping out, and that was all about the $1 Million Handshake. And it was incredible, wasn't it? It was such a great vibe. People in the crowd, you could see how enthusiastic they were. You give away all this free information, and it's tangible information that people can use every single day. And I just think things like that are incredible.
And what was lovely about that is I was meeting some friends on Sunday, and they were having dinner, and they had some friends they had never met before. And the lady I hadn't met said, "Sue, lovely to meet you." And she took my two hands in hers, and she held them for a long period of time, and she gripped them, and she looked into my eyes. And I was sort of distracted by other things. And I said, "Come on, children, in you come." And I was really aware of your talk, and I was really aware this lady was beautifully engaged in me, and I'd broken that engagement. I had everything else going on, and I wasn't fixated on her. And I came back to the present moment, and I was just so aware that I'm not always in the present moment of connecting with people. I'm always on the next thing, or everything's too busy. And it was your voice came in my head of just being in that moment of holding her hand. And actually I thought, gosh, her handshake was probably the most powerful handshake I've ever had, because she held me and looked into my eyes, and I thought, gosh, I mean something to her. It was powerful, and that was because of what you taught us on that day. So, free workshop in Auckland is very exciting. Can you tell us when it is? Have you got a date?
November 2020.
November 2020. Right, we'll take note of that, and listeners,
I'll
it's well worth
date.
going. So, Tell us when you published your book, Catherine. When did the book come out?
So the book was published in May 2018
Yes.
for Hachette in Australia and New Zealand. It came up at the major bookstores as well, Dymocks and, a few of the others there. And of course, it was in the airports for around 6 months, which apparently was a very good time. Most of the money lasts around 3. So that was exciting.
So when Jo says it's in different languages, is it in Kiwi and Aussie language then?
Yes.
Yeah, I get it.
Yes. It has bro and sweet.
Love it.
In actual fact, we can all laugh because I was conceived in Auckland, New Zealand.
Oh, there you go. A little bit of Kiwi in you then.
Born and bred, made
Kiwi
in.
in me for sure.
Made in New Zealand.
And I love coming back to New Zealand. But yes, so the book, and for those of you out there that are thinking of writing a book, I know so many people are writing books. I didn't think it was important for me to write a book, and I had put it off 2 years, even after being told, Kath, you really should be writing a book. And then eventually I started speaking, and I was speaking on international stages, and, sometimes they want an author speaker, even though I knew authors didn't necessarily be able to speak. But I hate missing out on anything, as you can probably gather by now. So I put the book together, and then I thought, yes, I'll self-publish it, and 1/3 is going to our charity. We've been working with orphans in Uganda around Gulu since 2010 when I started my business. It was a charity I was asked to come on board with, and Toto are amazing. Their vision and what they have done, supplying hundreds of homes to children. What happened was Coney came through. He's now in the Congo, and they killed so many people, and the children hid in trees, and they stole the children and turned them, used them in the army, or some of them got away. So we've been helping support the ones that did get away, but we've discovered villages of women and children, and the women are dying of cervical cancer, AIDS, because education is needed. Now, I know that some people around the world will say, we should only help at home, but I know in Australia, if you need water, you can get water.
Yeah.
If you need clothes, you can get clothes. If you need food or shelter, you can get that. But there are some countries where they live in the dirt, they wear rags, and it's very difficult. Even as I go to sleep each night, I see the girls' faces, and we've created a teenage program that will be being released in November this year. When I go over, we're getting leaders from Matoto to take it out to these villages to educate in worth. So I have a program called Unlock Your Wisdom and Worth.
Fantastic. And I know that, as you say, many people say we should have charities that are close to home, but actually we follow the desires of our heart, and we follow what we're passionate about, don't we? And to all our listeners here, whatever you're passionate about, follow that desire. Don't let anybody influence that.
And your main value at the minute, look what's coming through, is kindness. And it's being kind to everybody, not just people close to home, is it? It's showing that kindness, that compassion to others around the world. They didn't choose to be born into that country necessarily, did they? That's just where they are. It's their circumstances, and we all know by educating women, that's the backbone of how to help these countries, isn't it?
Yes. And I thought love is such an important thing. Like when you're dying, I think the thing that you'll think was, did you love enough? Were you loved? And it's so powerful. But the reason kindness has come through for me this year is we can love things, but you're not necessarily kind.
Mm-hmm.
You could love someone and not be kind to them.
Yeah, totally.
And I know a lot of husbands and wives that would love each other, but they're not necessarily kind in the words that they use. And so this year, I just want to be a newer, kinder person in love.
Lovely. We love New Year's.
And I just love values like that as well. I just think, if you raise your vibrations, and if you're kind to people around you, you're raising their vibrations, and that's what this world needs right now. We need everybody's vibrations raising to be a kinder, more peaceful place.
And isn't that also the source of connection? We connect with people through that, don't we? Even when people are not being nice to us, so we've got sort of enemies out there. By being kind back, we dispel everything coming towards us, don't we? Going back to your book, though, I think your book is wonderful. I've read your book. And you said to those people out there, do or don't write a book. But a book, other than making money, is also a business card, isn't it? It's a business card to give you an authority on a subject to become a public speaker. So did you find your book gave you an entrance into the world of public speaking, or were you already into that world?
Yes, I had already been delivering the $1 Million Handshake worldwide as a keynote since 2016. 2014 I started to speak, and then 2016 I chose that then as my career, and I sold my training company. And but by 2018, when the book came out, so it really has catapulted me into now that $8,000 to $10,000 speaker that I've now come in 2019.
Nice. Congratulations yet again. We love these milestones and achievements.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important. And, people, especially women, are so worried about money. Like you mentioned money, and sometimes people start to freeze and think, well, that's not important. The best thing about money is you have the opportunity to help so many. So I am really excited. And my husband, he's so funny because he used to tell me I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, or that wouldn't work. And now when I come up with an idea, he goes, you should do that.
Well, so he's learning as well. That's good for him.
And isn't that about empowering other people? Because we all, and I'm sure all listeners on here will relate to it as well, we've all had people speak into our life. You can't do that. You won't do that. You're no good at that. And actually, sometimes they are our greatest strengths, but we bury them and don't use them. You'll never speak on stage. You've got nothing to say. You didn't read widely. You don't have a vocabulary. And yet, actually, often those people end up on stage. And so the message to listeners is actually don't listen to those voices, or identify what those voices were, what was said against you, and maybe that is your very gifting to get out there and use it. And not to be stopped by anything. We can achieve anything, can't we, if we set our mind to it?
Absolutely. The world truly is your oyster. And, there was a saying before when you were talking about when things get tough, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. And so if you are listening to this and you're sitting there thinking there is something that I would like to do, then, I say do it.
I do too, because what's the worst thing? What's the worst thing? It doesn't work out. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a failure, does it? Because we don't believe in that necessarily. It's a lesson. So if it does work out, great, frickin' do it. If it doesn't, you've learned a valuable lesson, and maybe just try again and try again.
Or find another way to do the same thing that will work, as opposed to walking away from it. Yeah. Persistence. And that takes courage.
Yeah, it just made me think of there's 100 ways to skin a cat, but that is such a bad saying. So, yes, don't do that. But
no, we like our cats. We like cats, don't we? We won't skin our cats.
But when you think about it, how many times did it take to create the light bulb? I think it was over 10,000. So there's no losing. There's only learning. And I totally agree with you. If something doesn't work, the thing that's great, because sometimes the universe, that wasn't your direction, but we've learned so much along that journey that we can bring into that next path that we want to go on. So once again, if you are struggling, then find a great mentor, find somebody that's doing what you want to do, and listen to them, see how they're doing it, ask them questions. You can only have two answers, which would be, one would be yes and one would be no. So don't stop.
And my mother used to say again and again, when there's a will, there's a way. So actually it's about willpower, isn't it? You can find the way. You could try 100 different ways, but maybe it's 101 that works. But it's about willpower. It's actually having the determination. It's about being able to push through until you find something that works. Stick at it. Don't just walk away because it hasn't worked out. Don't just feel insecure, inadequate. Keep at it again and again and again.
Absolutely. And going back to some of those sayings, one of the things that I learned as a child, I went to Sunday school. So you can see how my mind works. I will always pick up the things that I want to make a difference. And I learned that if you ask, you will receive, right? Ask and you shall receive. So that's been my favorite thing all the way through my life. So when I stepped into business and I had to step up, I had no qualms ever about asking for business, asking to close a deal, asking someone else for advice. And I think I've just been writing a book, The Conscious Leader, How to Lead a Life Worth Living. And I've had a lot of conversations, and the leaders that don't think they know everything and will actually ask are the ones that are making the biggest differences.
Yeah, that's such great advice, because I think often we are too frightened to ask because people are too frightened to hear the word no, and that's what holds a lot of us back, and it's our ego holding us back at the end of the day, isn't it? And that fear of failure and rejection. But actually, is it really a rejection? No, just go and ask somebody else, or go and ask again, because if no is the very worst scenario, well, it's actually not that bloody bad, is it? But it takes us a while to learn that sometimes.
Why is it so hard to ask, though?
I think it is that fear of rejection. It's the fear of failure, and it brings up things within people that perhaps they haven't worked on.
And fear of failure or fear of rejection is about our ego, isn't it? So it's about coming out of ego into a place of, well, actually, if I do fail, there's a lesson in it. It's not about my ego.
I mean, look at us too now. We just go around saying to people, will you come on the podcast? And actually, I think one person has said no because their schedule was just a little bit packed. But apart from that, all you crazies have said yes.
And so, that's definitely something to take away into life. Ask and you shall receive. Ask and you shall receive has definitely held me in good stead in my life.
The other one is you do not have because you do not ask. Like it.
Do you know what? I love the fact that we have just come out with a ton of sayings today. This was totally not planned, was it? It was just like, let's just keep throwing them in.
And you're so right, because the thing that keeps us stuck on the couch is ego.
Yeah, it is. And actually, our ego can be as big or as small as you want it to be, because the ego is always going to be there. It's always going to be sitting on your shoulder. But how much are you going to let it rule your life? Because it's actually holding you back. So get rid of that thing and keep moving forward.
Awesome.
So actually, looking back on it, your biggest obstacle, adversity, crisis, failure, whatever you want to say, the situation with your husband not being able to go forward in real estate was what's propelled you into where you're at right now. So for those people that are stuck in a place with a failed relationship, a failed business, or even depression, their children leaving home, whatever it is, it's when you're in a difficult place, when you're in a crisis, it's black and it's bleak and it's hard. But what you need to hear when you're in that place is there is a way through, and that actually this could be the turning point in your life. So use it as a propelling into the next place that you're going to go to. Don't see it as a stopping place. Don't see it as failure, but say this can be the point of transition in my life. And I'm not going to see it right now, but when I look back in 5 years, I will be so grateful for this. Although I wouldn't want to go back into it ever again, and we wouldn't wish suffering on anyone, that actually for most people in life, when you look at them and you look at successful people, there was always a critical turning point in their life. And it was often the death of someone they loved. It was sickness. It was failure. So for our listeners now, is there something you'd like to say? Who are those people that are stuck in really difficult places that just think, you know what, I can't see that my life will ever get better. I can't see that hope. I don't have that vision.
Just think of, and life is going to continually give us these little things. I was orphaned in Australia, and then I was adopted, and then my mum died in front of me at the age of 16.
Wow.
And so things are going to happen in your life continually. Mm-hmm. This is life, okay? The only thing you can be 100% sure of is that you'll die. But just remember that little oyster that gets that grain of sand in it that is really irritating and frustrating and uncomfortable, and they don't want it in there. And it releases that little bit of like a saliva around this grain of sand. And eventually, over time, it turns into that beautiful pearl. And I think this is what it's like in life when things happen to us. It doesn't feel right. Why me? Why now? Why this? But then if we can look at it differently and start to release different thoughts around what's happening to create a different pattern, we then end up with this pearl in our life, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
I love that. I love that analogy, and it's such a beautiful picture that you've painted, because you're right. The tough times are gritty. They're real gritty, like sand, and nobody wants sand in their sandwiches or in their face or anywhere, quite frankly. And it is gritty, but it is where we learn our biggest lessons. It's where we have our biggest growth, and I think that's what we really want our listeners to take away. The tough times are bad, but there's light somewhere else.
And actually
There's always
also
light.
that, life can turn into this pearl, but actually for our listeners, actually at the moment, our listeners are the pearls. They don't need to become the pearls. Each listener is unique, is beautiful, has incredible strengths. They might not feel it right now, but when we are, in the situation we're in, we've come through adversity, we can recognize the beauty in each individual, and to say to listeners right now, actually, you are perfect as you are right now. And with the courage and with the strength to go on, by being motivated by people like you, Catherine, and coming on a podcast, they too can have the motivation to keep going and to find the pearl in their life they're looking for, which is to come out of the depression or whatever, the struggle that they're in.
Absolutely. And if we are in depression, one of the best things with the people that I've worked with around the world is when we start doing something for someone else, or think of something else, or join a charity or join a volunteer group. Once we're doing things for others, it actually stops us thinking about where we are and what problems we have.
Yeah.
And so that's what I found in the business. The more I did for others, the better our business grew as well.
Because it's ethical, isn't it? It feels good. It's like, I heard a psychologist talking once and he said, actually, by giving and doing things for other people is actually quite selfish, really, because you get such a high out of it. So you feel really good. So there's a selfish element to it, even though it's like the most selfless way to be selfish. But it makes you feel better when you do things for other people. It boosts your spirit, it boosts your mood, and it makes you feel like a better person.
It's even giving someone a smile as you're walking down the street, because it makes you feel good, it makes them feel good. It can just change someone's day. So, I spoke before about kindness and love, and one of the last things that I would love to leave you with as well is, a lot of people seek happiness. Yeah. It's more of a doing word, be happy. Instead, in these moments each day, no matter what's happening, just find a moment of joy.
Yeah.
Whether it's when you put your feet in the grass, or look up at the stars, or, whatever it is that you do, smell a flower or give someone a wave or a smile, just find moments of joy. Yeah. We don't need to seek happiness. You may be searching for that for your whole life, but we can find moments of joy in each and every day, and I think we need to cherish those.
We totally agree with you, Catherine. And you know what? I just commend you, because your story is so big, from orphan to being adopted to losing your mother, for your husband having a breakdown, and to running the life you've got now. And you deserve every bit of success, because you are awesome. And we wish you well.
That's very kind.
We do. No, we wish you well. And you know what? This is what we need: more women to tell their story like this, to inspire other women. We are all about lifting women. So thank you so much for sharing everything. Thank you for being totally honest. Thank your husband for allowing you to share his story. And yeah, we wish you all the best, and we cannot wait to see you in November.
And also, I think you've covered so many topics: integrity, authenticity, kindness, being courageous, and love. And they're the messages we want to leave with our listeners. Those that want to buy your book, The $1 Million Handshake, or find more about you, what is your website, Catherine?
www.catherinemolloy.com.au.
Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks so much for being with us today. For us to inspire others to live their magnificently imperfect life, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or on your podcast app. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Pods with Posh and Pool. We can't wait for you to join us on our next episode. Love, light and peace.